They say prison changes a man. And you know, I would disagree. I run a podcast. And as you can see, I have finally been brought to Minecraft prison, where it's the only place that they could handle me. And you know, in order to get time off my sentence, I was going to do a podcast episode. And you know, this says a lot about being a podcast guy, you know? Imagine spending like half a week in prison when you could own a podcast and not be in prison whatsoever. It's just absolutely crazy. But good evening, everyone. This is your podcast host, Jess, and I am joined by my prison therapist, Professor Dr. Finn, who is apparently a professional at treating manic schizophrenia. I don't know any of that, like any of that is, but today we are looking at some very interesting game parts. Now, one thing we have to see is one Monsieur Alan Wake and a Parappa the Rapper. And Professor Dr. Finn knows a lot about, well, how may I say, Alan Wake and Parappa the Rapper. Would you like to go over some of your research you've done on Alan Wake and Parappa the Rapper?
I mean, yes, of course. I think so. So my degrees plural. I have uh two PhDs and one minor. Um, which the one is in podcast therapy, the other one in Parappa the Rapper, for the PhDs, and the Alan Wake being the minor. So I know a little bit of supplemental information about Alan Wake, but I'm mainly a Parappa the Rapper expert. So
Mm.
I thought I could offer my expertise on this, while also giving you therapy for said schizophrenia.
I have no idea what you're talking about. That's absolutely ludicrous. But today we're trying to see Alan Wake. He's a writer, right? And Parappa the Rapper, he writes in song, if so to speak. And you know, in my mind, I've been seeing the two clash together in my dreams, and I've been wondering how exactly that interaction would go about. Can you describe to me a little bit about what Parappa the Rapper does?
Yeah, of course. So Parappa the Rapper, I think we can define his his core moveset as, or really strength as, are you familiar with the concept of like Toon Force, of like just being able to do whatever you want because you're in a cartoon basically?
Relatively, yeah, I understand. Kind of like Tom and Jerry, and just random crap happens, kind of.
Yeah, yeah, like bending the laws of physics and things like that because you're just in a cartoon. It's kind of like that, but instead of because you're in a cartoon, it's through the power of music. It's because he's like, basically he's like, and he's on a one track mind because he's like, he's got this love interest, Sunny, and that's the only thing that's on his mind. And so uh any problem that gets in the way of getting with Sunny, he's like, I gotta believe. And and that's how and that's really how he just gets through his problems. Because he rap battles anyone who gets in his way. Um,
All right,
and yeah.
gotcha. And then he's like, I gotta receive.
And then they receive uh an awakening and they just kind of go on with their life.
An Alan awakening, right?
An
Or
Alan awakening. And Alan, I guess you could say it has been written because Alan Wake is a writer.
he is a writer, not just
He
any writer.
really is.
He writes on a typewriter, which makes him a certain kind of writer, you know, who
He's a type
insists
of
upon
writer.
himself.
He
It's just-
he he really insists upon himself. But, uh but yeah, at the end of the day, Parappa the Rapper is really just a ball of determination and bars. So, yeah,
Well, he's also part belief too, or it's like there's a certain part of him that's belief. And in
yeah,
the other corner, we have one Alan Wake, who he is a writer, and that is all the notable traits about Alan Wake that we have.
that's the only thing that we know and need to know, and that's all we want to know about Alan Wake, is that he's a writer.
He also has a wife.
No, I don't. We don't need to know that. We don't need to know that.
The main plot of Alan Wake 1. I don't have a wife anymore. I guess I'll leave. Alan Wake, more like Alan, get this woman out of my
He's
life.
not. He's lost wife privileges. I don't know what to tell you. He's
Here's the thing. You're not wrong. He did lose white privileges.
I-
But
but
with that being
uh,
said, Dr. Professor Finn.
oh
Did
no,
you have
I was just
anything to
gonna
input?
say he's just done unspeakable things. I don't think that man should not have a wife.
He wrote a
Unrelated.
novel. He has gotten really angry. He sees things. He's schizophrenic. Yeah, I definitely think he should have been in the psych ward.
Yeah,
Like without a
yeah.
doubt.
Honestly, he should be in that chair instead of you.
You know what? You're right. Alan Wake should be in prison.
He should.
Yeah,
That's what I'm
yeah.
saying.
So essentially, we basically have the equivalent of a criminal and like just an absolute ball of joy who is Parappa, and so they're kind of like opposites of each other.
Yeah, I think they really are polar opposites. They're polar opposites, but also two sides of the same coin, where they're kind of like the yin and yang. Like they have the same power set kind of, but they kind of like but they're just like they represent two aspects of it, if you think about it.
Yeah, I see. I see what you mean. Because Alan Wake, whatever he types on his magical typewriter of magical darkness and whatnot in like the ocean and stuff, it's like it just magically comes true. It's almost like it's a plot of some sort. And Parappa, if he believes, well, he can do anything.
Yeah. I mean, he's proven that time and time again. So I think like I mean, it's a tough battle, but I I think he's got the strength.
No, I think he's got the belief for it. But with that being said, now we have to actually see how would these two actually get into blows in the first place, because let's just say I'm pretty sure Parappa has like a very long fuse. You have to do a couple of things to really get on Parappa's nerves. And Alan Wake, you just have to be someone he doesn't like, which is a lot of people.
Yeah, I think Alan Wake. It's easy to piss off Alan Wake, but it's really hard to piss off Parappa the Rapper. So let's just set the scene for a second, okay?
All right, all right.
So so it's I forgot what the town name is, but let's call it Parappa Town. We're in Parappa Town. We're in the Parappa verse, okay? Um, and Alan Wake happens to be at the burger joint that everyone frequents in Parappa Town, right?
Yeah.
And so he goes up, or sorry, he doesn't go up. He gets in line. In front of him in line is Sunny, Parappa's love interest. Uh, and she's at the front of the line. Alan Wake is behind him, and Parappa enters the restaurant. And it's Sunny. She doesn't know what she wants. She's taking her time a little bit. She's like, I don't know. And Alan's getting a little pissy. He wants his burger. So he's like, can you hurry it up? Like I got writing to do. Like I got burgers to eat and writing to do. So so Parappa sees this and he already gets a little peeved. And but so Sonny orders her burger. Alan gets his burger. and everyone gets their food. They all sit and they start to sit down. Uh, and then Sunny is sitting or standing in the walkway where in between seats, and Alan bumps into her like very rudely, very very um just in a very rude manner. And I think that's what sets it off for Parappa. And he's like, "Hey, don't cut that out. Stop being like that to Sonny." And he's like, "What is this fucking dog gonna do? Like, what do we like? What, you're like you dog mongrel. You just you
You mongrel dog
you
that
mongrel dog.
speaks and has 2 legs.
How dare you speak and have 2 legs?" And Parappa's like, "I don't even know what that means." And
Well,
Alan's like, "You wouldn't get it. You're not a writer." But so Parappa's like, "Well, it doesn't matter because you got to. Well, we're gonna settle this." And and Alan's like, "All right, well, you think you can take me? Let's do it." And Parappa's like, "I gotta believe."
well, all right,
And I
okay.
think that's where it all kicks off.
Okay, I see a couple of things with this scene. So it's like I like the setup, but it's like I feel like there's a little bit more to the setup that's a little needed before they come to blows. Well,
Okay,
first
okay.
off, Alan Wake. Alan Wake's the type of guy to get a coffee at a burger joint. So
Oh,
I'm
he
like,
would. Oh,
yeah,
oh yeah,
yeah.
absolutely.
So Alan Wake is behind Sunny, right? And he's like, man,
That
I really
fucking
got to get a
writer.
coffee. It's like, man, all these anthropomorphic animals ordering hamburgers when I could get a coffee right
How
now.
dare these fucking mongrel dogs order burgers at the burger joint?
Exactly. You see, he's insisting upon himself, which is what a writer usually does. And he'd
How
be like,
dare.
because the thing is, he also hasn't written like a single like word in 2 years, right? And so
Yeah.
he's like, I am a very busy man. I have a lot of writing to do, but he's lying. There's no writing to be done. He's gonna sit in a chair at home and get no work done whatsoever. And he's gonna be like, man, being a writer is really, really hard. And he's gonna be like, you know, I am such a great writer and I am in such dire need and stress, man. All those animals at the burger joint really like they really did not help whatsoever. And so it's like, but the thing is you don't see that. You see it on his face, right? So Sunny turns around and sees that on Alan Wake's face. And then Parappa is like sees that on Sunny's face, is like, oh man, this guy really does not like anthropomorphic animals who speak. And it's like, all right, all right. It's like, so that's strike one for Parappa, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And so, right, Alan Wake goes up and orders a coffee, right? And everyone is shocked in the burger restaurant. Not just because he got a coffee, but also because a 3D white man is in the rapper
Oh my god. This fucking white man in a world of animals and so we're dealing with a case of discrimination.
Yes. And not just
On
that.
both sides, really.
Yeah.
On both sides, really, where they're like this human and this human doesn't belong here. And then Alan Wake is like, "You mongrel dog." And that's where the conflict is.
Yeah. Alan Wake's like, I haven't seen or written stories about, or actually, it'd be I have an idea. It's like Alan Wake would see this as like they're all childish, right? Like they're all cartoony. It's like this is like as a writer, he's like, he's very mature, and it's like, my writing is like really, really refined. It's like these aren't mongrels. This is like kindergarten, right? It's like these are all like they're all beneath him, right? You see?
Yeah.
And so he's kind of just like what would be a word to like describe like children stuff without like saying like what is it, without like saying
Juvenile or like
ju
very
yeah,
Yeah.
these juvenile caricatures of what is it? Juvenile caricatures of words personified in the form of animals. And it's
And
like
I think Parappa. I also want to add. I think Parappa would be the type to roast where he's like, where Alan Wake is like I gotta get back to writing. I don't even care. And Parappa's like, well, why don't you write some bitches? Why don't you write why don't you write your wife back in your life?
why don't you write a novel where you
Why
have a
don't you
good
why don't you write
relationship
it
with
up?
your
Why don't
wife?
you why don't you write a loving family? Why don't you write a story where you have a loving family?
Why don't you write a story where you understand that being angry and a writer doesn't mean you can treat your wife terribly? Buddy's the world's greatest writer, but he couldn't see he's the world's worst partner.
So yeah, I think he's got beef. Like Parappa will this is like rap beef. It's basically just rap beef, but Alan Wake, and in this case, I think Alan Wake is the Drake of this, and Parappa's the Kendrick. So
I don't
I
like where
think
this is going already.
and I mean Drake has a history of being a
Well, I don't think we should
say
go to. I don't think we should go to this history right
hey,
now.
hey, hey, hey. I don't want to throw out any allegations, but I think someone should check. Someone needs to investigate Alan Lake. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying.
You know, I think Alan Wake isn't gonna be like, man, anthropomorphic animals. I wish to have sex with anthropomorphic animals.
do
Destroy.
not look up. Do not look up what Alan Wake did in '04. For the love of God.
do not do, do not look up Alan Wake Rule 34.
Do not. Under no circumstances. Uh, but yeah, I think we set the scene well enough. And now we can get into if we're thinking of this in like death battle context. This is where like this is where the fight begins, right?
I was like, yeah, okay. So it's like, already, like, they're already angry at each other. So it's like, all right. So Alan Wake has gotten his coffee and is likely sitting at is sitting at the counter while Parappa is sitting next to like Sunny, right?
Mm-hmm.
So first off, I think probably Alan Wake is gonna come over to Parappa, and Parappa's not gonna go over to Alan Wake. You know, that's probably
Yeah,
how it's
yeah,
gonna go. And
yeah.
so Parappa, you know, whenever he raps, he repeats what the other person says, right? Except in
Mm-hmm.
like a couple small exceptions, right?
Yeah.
So imagine someone's talking. It's like this white man with his coffee at the counter. You know, it's like, I don't know, man. I don't know about this guy. And then Parappa is kind of just like, Alan Wake is a loser, and then something like that along those lines. And then Alan's like, I am not a loser. I am a writer. And then he gets up all angrily. It's like, I would have you know, I am like the greatest writer in all of the world. I have written stuff such as I forgot what novels Alan Wake actually wrote. I was like, I actually knew the novels that Alan Wake wrote, and I forgot each and every one of them.
I think that says a lot about Alan Wake as a writer. I think that says everything that needs to be said. But I think Alan Wake goes, I'm the greatest writer to ever do this. And then Parappa's like, I'm the greatest writer to ever do this. And Alan's like, shut the fuck up.
At this point, Alan's like, all right, you little weasel guy, all right. And then he like pulls out his typewriter. And I was like, all right, do you want to see what good writing is? But the thing is, they're not at blows yet. So Alan Wake types something up real fast. But actually, he doesn't, because he hasn't written a single word in over 2 years, right? So he's just at
Right.
the typewriter looking all nervous, like he doesn't have any inspiration. And Parappa is just like, what is it? Alan Wake is probably going to say, it's like, I don't know what to write. And it was like, you don't know what to write. And then Alan Wake is kind of just like, you can see him stressing out, right? He's like his hands are on his temple, right? And it's like, but then suddenly this is where things start to happen, right? So in Alan Wake, there's this thing called the darkness, which controls him and has him write essentially, like, because he never has in like a very long time. So
Mhm.
what ends up happening is the darkness takes hold. And the reason why this happens is because obviously there's a hole between the Parappa the Rapper verse and like the Alan Wake verse, where suddenly the game Control appeared. It's like, you know what? It's like that, like they clashed. It was like that was the merger or something.
Right.
I
Yeah.
don't know. I haven't played Control. Yeah, but I mean that's basically what happened in
I
Control.
mean, basically.
Basically. And so the like their universes merge, right? And so the darkness is able to seep into Parappa the Rapper's world, and then the darkness like is an old lady in like in a funeral gown,
Mhm.
and well that's the appearance the darkness takes, and the darkness is just like, Alan Wake, you must kill this dog. And then she's like, I will help you kill this dog. And then she's just like, I have some ideas for you to write. And so she essentially, Alan Wake starts actually typing stuff. And then suddenly it's like, all right, now it's suddenly on, because Parappa is like, okay, now this feels wrong. Parappa's like, I gotta believe, you know?
Yeah, I mean, he's gotta believe. So, I think Parappa, like, he I I mean, it's a tough battle for him, because also, you have to think about the fact that Parappa, like, repeats words back at him, and so he's relying on whatever Alan Wake types up, which well, but which he can't repeat back what he types, but Alan Wake says whatever he types out loud, so he could just repeat that back. So
Yeah.
I think like Parappa in some ways is at the whimsy of whatever Alan Wake uh chooses to come up with, but I think that gets at what the core of Parappa is, and I actually wrote my thesis on this back in for my PhD, which is that I think that
Oh yeah, in
the
Cambridge.
yes, yes, of course, um, and that Parappa repeating lyrics back to his opponent, like, is a way of, like, making them self-reflect and really dive into, like, what they're saying and dissect and make them really think about what they're saying, and realize, like, maybe they're in the wrong. And, like, if they're opposed, maybe it's like, uh, they realize their insecurities, and, like, this is coming from a place of insecurity or some negative emotion, and it usually causes change for the better. So I think I think that's ultimately how Parappa uses his power for good, and in which it should in an ideal world would just work on Alan Wake if it wasn't for the darkness, which throws
Yeah.
a huge monkey wrench in all of that, because it's a big wild card. Because I think uh, I mean, you can attest to this more because you're more of an Alan Wake expert, but I believe that the whole thing is the darkness is trying to create like the best story, right?
So it's like the darkness is trying to create a story that allows itself to escape, right? Because like the
Right.
darkness is essentially confined to a metaphorical like lake, it's like like Alan Lake,
Alan Lake, yeah.
yeah, Alan Lake. It's like it's kind of like Alan Bake, Alan Chicken Bake, and stuff like that. So essentially, it's like think of like there's almost like a wall preventing the darkness from really just being absolutely extremely evil, right? And
Yeah.
so it's going to use this story in order to actually try to break out of its confinement. So think about it like this. As Alan Wake is typing and the darkness is kind of overhead, it's creating a canon plot line, right? So essentially, Parappa doesn't know this, but essentially the closer Alan Wake gets to finishing the story is the closer it gets to like the ending, where it's like this will be 100% canon. So
Yeah.
essentially, Parappa has to throw a wrench into the writing process or stop the writing process altogether or change the ending in order to bring Alan Wake to heel. Because if Parappa doesn't, then that will give Alan Wake the win. But really, it gives the darkness the win, which consumes everything. Because if Alan Wake wins, there are no winners. There are only
Right.
losers. And, you know, Alan Wake would really say, is like, man, this is a metaphor for the human condition.
Right. Well, I want to go further into that. I have a few points on that, but I wanted to ask if how much influence the darkness can have on the Parappa world if the lake is still in the Allen Lake world.
You know, that's a great question. And so essentially with the game Control, the whole universe merger thing really just threw the lake into the Parappaverse. So what ended up happening is there's just a giant 3D lake in the Parappaverse right now, also right outside of the burger joint too.
Okay.
And
Okay. Okay.
the thing is, everyone's already at the burger joint, and it's like when Alan Wake shows up, it's like he's just like he's completely wet because he was in a lake, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And so it's like there's just a giant lake out there now. Also, it's nighttime too, so it's like there's a massive darkness. And someone saying, "Man, have you ever played the game Control?" And I'm like, "No, I haven't." And so that's essentially what's happening there. So the darkness has influence on the Parappa world because of the game Control.
Gotcha. Okay. So I think let's. I want to address that. I think that Parappa's. I don't think Parappa is a very benevolent like guy. Where I think that Parappa's like the goal is not to just like defeat Alan Wake. It's really because, like I said in said thesis, I think that it's really like his goal is usually to like cause some kind of change, like for the better in his opponent. And so I think that really the goal is not to defeat Alan Wake more so than to free him from the darkness, right?
Oh yeah,
So
I see.
so I think that we haven't like I think the difference though is that the darkness has not seen in a opposing force of let's like of light, I guess, that also has a reality warping thing. So I think this is where I think the darkness has found like its match of like equal of like equal, if not maybe more power, because not only does Parappa have like a lot of power like in this like in this context with just him, but also at the end of of each Parappa game, which with you have the big party at the end where everyone is singing. So you have an entire it's like Goku gathering energy for the spirit bomb, where you have an entire town just feeding their positive energy towards Parappa. And he's just gathering all that like a spirit bomb. So I think in a pinch, Parappa can call on the support of others. Maybe it depends on whether that's any ally really, but I think that it adds up. He carries the city on his back. He's got the homies with him.
Okay, I see what you mean. So essentially, this power allows him to go off script instead of being like, okay, it's like repeating what people says. He can now say stuff like, "I gotta believe, I gotta receive," and it's like it gives him
Yeah,
a greater power over like what usually confines him.
it does because I think because then you have uh a someone who you have someone people from the town writing like providing lyrics and that by itself is okay. but then you have Parappa repeating that and strengthening it to fight like in using that against Alan Wake. So it's definitely like by himself, Parappa can like throw stuff back at Alan Wake, but like with his allies, he can throw like new material at him.
Okay, I see what you mean. So now let's get to the actual fight part. So Alan Wake has his typewriter and grandma by his side at the moment, and
Mhm.
Parappa has the microphone, right? So
Yeah.
Alan Wake is essentially just typing stuff, right? But like that doesn't mean anything. It's like Alan Wake is like trying to do like all this like what is it, life-changing stuff, but it's like nothing's happening inside the burr joint at the moment. It's like I
Mhm.
mean it's dark outside, but like right now Parappa's like because of Parappa's like just overall power, it's like everything is nice and light and everything stays really nice. And
Yeah.
so essentially, Parappa gives Alan Wake the first move because he's going to repeat what's being said. And so Alan Wake is like writing stuff, but it's like it doesn't matter because Parappa's unaffected. So Alan Wake has to fight Parappa on his terms and not on writing terms.
Mhm. Yeah.
And
That's fair.
so what ends up happening is Alan Wake is like, okay, is like throwing my papers of writing at it to insult Parappa. Also, anything he writes about Parappa just isn't happening because he's Parappa the rapper. And it's like he's completely unaffected by any like magical typewriter because I mean he's believing, right? And
Yeah.
so what ends up happening is Alan Wake is like he has to revert to like verbal insults, right? And it's like Alan Wake's is like, you are a cartoonish animal. And then Parappa is like, you are a cartoonish animal. And Alan Wake hates this, right? He's just like, how dare you, Parappa? So essentially what's gonna happen is Alan Wake is going to try throwing out a bunch of insults towards Parappa, and then Parappa redirects him. And because Alan Wake's ego is much larger than Parappa's, Alan Wake is going to take a lot more of the egotistical damage. He's going to be like,
Yeah, yeah, Alan Wake takes a lot more psychic damage than Parappa because you can't really get to him. You the only way like you can't really get to him, and I don't think Alan Wake is like the only way you could get to Parappa is through his friends. Like if you insulted them or something like that. But I think Alan Wake is too blind in his rage and like ego. Like his hatred is fully on. He doesn't even realize that uh he like Parappa has this bond with his other people. Like his rage is solely focused on Parappa. So I think that it's just fully it just completely bounces off them.
yeah. And not just that, it's like his rage is also an emphasis for the darkness too. So the darkness is kind of just like, all right, the darkness doesn't like the power of friendship, right? So because of the power of friendship, it has to completely focus on Parappa and bringing down Parappa because is like if you bring down Parappa, you bring down everyone, right? But
Yeah.
it's struggling to do that because Parappa is just too powerful at the moment. But with that being said, as every insult Parappa is essentially taking and throwing back at Alan, Alan is kind of like he's growing weaker, right? He's like, I can't do this. So it's like he's too good. He's too good of a rapper, right?
Yeah.
And so what ends up happening is that Alan Wake, every single loss that he has, he gives more power up to the darkness, who's like, all right, that's a good bar, right? And I was like, oh dang, that's a banger, right? And so it's like it's to the point of which instead of Alan Wake writing, it's the darkness basically writing for him and making a bunch of changes to everything that he's done. So instead, Alan Wake is now like a meat puppet for Parappa the Rapper to fight, and it's kind of just like, all right, how does Parappa the Rapper handle the darkness? Essentially, is like with full darkness Alan Wake.
Right. Yeah, because I think this is like the boss fight second phase, right? Where he's lost complete control and now has surrendered to the darkness. So I think like Parappa, I think I feel like the darkness has an equal the darkness off of it feeds off of Alan Wake and negative emotions, therefore therefore cannot like it it, it, it Parappa can't like feel the negative emotions and as much because he doesn't like he just does not experience them. And so it's hard for the darkness to be like to throw anything at Parappa that he can just be like that he's gonna like take like or like take to heart, I guess.
Yeah, and with that being said, but then the darkness is like the more the battle goes on, the darkness is also like learning about the Parappa world and the environment, right? And so
Yeah.
with every second that passes, the darkness is like, wait a minute, if I can't get to Parappa, and then the darkness is like, okay, let me see who else is in this diner, right? And then it's like, what is it? The darkness kind of just like goes back into Alan Wake's mind. It's like, all right, what is Alan Wake seeing? And it's like, oh, he sees that Parappa looks at a certain way at Sunny, right? And
Yeah.
then suddenly the darkness is like, you know what? Let's start making disses towards Sunny, and then that starts to get to Parappa because it's like Parappa's like, you can do what you want to me, but not to my friends. And so Parappa's like, all right, now you've done it. And I believe at this point, this is where he has to believe.
This is I mean, yeah, I mean, you said it right there. I think anytime Parappa has faced any kind of challenge, it's just been he says, "I gotta believe," and after that is when everything works out. Because I think no matter how much the darkness tries to like write the story in their favor, I think when both parties are really trying to write the story, but I think which means that whichever is the better story wins. And I think that Parappa saying "I gotta believe" really the darkness doesn't have like a good foothold in the world. I think to overcome that, like I think like the darkness is still like new to the Parappaverse, so I don't think like the old lady can just like come in and like overtake everything. I mean, she's definitely gained a lot of power, but I think like Parappa, I don't know if she can survive a Parappa's I gotta believe, especially with she still has, even if you target Sunny, he still has the rest of the town behind him.
Yeah, that's quite true. And well, the thing is, once Parappa believes, he can go off script, right? So he can start dealing out, but not have to receive something in order to deal it back out. So
Yeah.
he looks at the darkness and he's like, "Darkness, never heard of her."
Darkness, schmarkness.
Darkness, darkness, more like fartness. And I was like, the darkness is like, all right, all right, all right. It's like the thing is, it's gonna get quite close because like the darkness grows with more influence. But the thing is, the darkness can't stop not Alan Wake's Parappa's bars against the darkness. Is like, and it's like every single time. And so it's like with every insult towards the darkness is like, what is it? This being is just too strong, right? There's too much light coming out of Parappa. And so it's like, and with every single second, it's like, what is it? When Parappa says it's like, I gotta believe, everyone else starts to join in, right? They're like, I gotta believe.
Yeah, because I mean, once everyone believes, I think it's too much light for the darkness to fight, I think.
Yeah. I don't think once everyone starts to work together, that really is what undoes the darkness. But the only thing is the darkness will still always be ever present in the Parappa verse. So what Parappa the rapper has to do is actually write the story so that the darkness gets sent back to control and back into the Alan Wake universe. And so probably what Parappa that says is like, go back to your filthy, smelly land. Get out of town.
I think actually, here's my pitch. I think that I think the Parappa says he talks to Parappa talks to Alan directly. And Alan, because Alan has been struggling, he's been fighting. He's been with the darkness. So like the darkness has consumed him so long that him and the darkness have basically just become the same person. And he has some moments of autonomy, but I feel like the darkness is mostly controlling him. Uh, but somewhere in there is Alan, and I think Parappa knows that. And so Parappa goes, "Alan, you gotta believe." And and Alan, and I think that's where Alan breaks free. That's where Alan really gets a hold of himself and breaks free from the darkness and using both of their powers combined. Because we got to remember, Alan Wake is a writer.
Yeah, he's a writer. He writes a lot, kind of. He
He
used to.
writes. I mean, well, he hasn't written in 4 years or something like that. But, but he is. But at the end of the day, Alan Wake is a goddamn writer. So when it gets down to the bone, when it gets down to the bone, and to save his new friend, Parappa the Rapper, the person who just freed him from the darkness, he's gonna fucking write. So so it's
Yeah, he is
he's
just
gonna
gonna.
write his damn ass off.
Well, but before he writes, he's like, man, I wish the relationship was better with my wife. They was no longer existing. And then Parappa is gonna go like,
Parappa's like, you should call Alice.
and then Alan's like, you're right, Parappa the Rapper. And then Alan Wake starts writing because the only person who can really banish the darkness is Alan Wake himself. And
Right.
like Alan Wake, he has to make the sacrifice. And I was like, you know what? I can't give in to my dark emotions. I have to believe. And so Alan Wake writes at the end, I believe that the darkness will go back to control, which goes back to Alan Wake. And with that being said, the
Goes back to the
darkness
lake.
and go back to the bake. And then Alan is like, thank you, Parappa, for everything. And then suddenly Parappa the Rapper universe, the split from control, the split goes away. And the lake that was put next to the burger joint is gone. Alan Wake is gone. The typewriter is gone. And then Parappa the Rapper is just left there in the burger joint. It's all sunny, back to being sunny outside. And then not sunny as in the love interest, sunny as in like that it's bright outside, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so Sunny is like, Parappa, are you okay? And then Parappa then says, I am okay. And then they all have a bunch of burgers. And then we cut to Alan Wake, who is at the bottom of the Alan Lake. And he's like, man, I should call my wife. And the thing is, both of them go back to what they were doing at the start. But the point being is the darkness got close to taking over, but Parappa is just so positive that the light and also all the people around him who have been touched by Parappa are so much more positive and are like, man, it's like darkness, more like stupid.
more like stupid.
And with that being said, it was like, because of that, Parappa wins against Alan Wake, and more so the darkness.
Yeah, really, really, Parappa wins over the darkness. I think Alan Wake is merely a puppet in all of this, and I think in this whole kerfuffle, he's been. I mean, the grip that the darkness has on him has definitely. It's not completely undone because they all got sent back to the Alan Wake Lake bake, but the hold is definitely weakened, I think.
Yeah, we'll have to see an Alan Wake 3.
I mean, yeah.
Yeah.
Alan Wake chicken bake, and that gets 5 booms.
I'm-
Boom, 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 boom.
Oh, I'm sorry your wife passed away. She gets 5 big booms.
Alan Wake, I'm sorry your wife. I'm sorry your wife passed away. She gets 5 booms.
Boo! Boo!
Boo, boo, boo.
I don't even know what we're talking about anymore.
I don't.
Yeah, but remember to get Alan Wake 3 on Steam, officially sponsored. It's going to be coming out at the end of 2025, so make sure to look out for that.
Sam
Hashtag
Lake.
not sponsored.
Hashtag not sponsored. Sam Lake, send the check in the mail, please, for the love of God.
And with that being said, so Parappa will definitely win at the end of the day. And I think this just says a lot about the human condition, where it's like, out of everything,
The human condition, or because he is a dog.
yeah. Oh, yeah. I didn't think about that.
Well, I think it is still a human condition, but he got that dog in him.
He does got that dog in him. But you know what also he has in him? Burgers. He has a lot of burgers in him. Speaking
Those
of,
burgers.
how many burgers has Parappa the Rapper eaten?
Probably like at least 3.
My I wonder how many dog years he has lost from all the burgers he has eaten.
I mean, shit. If it's times set, dude, he's probably lost like 30 dog years or something like that to at least the burgers.
Okay, we can't tell Sonny. This is gonna, oh no. But that'll be a topic for another episode.
Yeah,
As
that's for our next session. We could talk about that in our next session.
well, the next time my parole officer is gonna come over here and be like, "All right, you get to be released onto parole." I'm gonna be on parole for like 50 years, so it's like that was kind of the deal there.
Congrats, I think. I mean, at least you get out.
Yeah, I don't get out like the rest of the people. Jaywalkers, like they're in there for life. I committed first-degree murder, and it's like I only here for like a couple of days, and then I go on parole.
Yeah, I mean, podcast therapy is really a community service if you think about it. So I think it really the sentence tracks.
Yeah, but it's like I really think this just shows is like when you have a podcast, it's like you shouldn't have to face any punishment for anything, like
No, I agree
no.
totally.
Like that murder is like, what is it? All that is like all the horses that surround me is like, what is it? They're coming at me like a dark horse, But like, are they even ready for the perfect storm?
I mean, as a totally unbiased party in a licensed podcast therapist, I think if you have a podcast, you should be able to do whatever you want, including just have uh immunity to any kind of punishment of any kind whatsoever.
You're right. I'm gonna kill Alan Wake.
Uh, you do you.
Well, here's the thing, right? So it's like we're in two separate universes if you think about it. If I go to Alan Wake's universes, kill him, and come back, I don't go to jail, right?
Yeah. I mean, there's maybe. I mean, the darkness might. Nah. You're good. You're good.
What if I am the darkness the whole time? Do you know the asylum that they raised me in? It was in a lake with an island in the middle.
With the bake.
There was no Costco there.
Yeah. That really was the darkness then.
The darkness is that it did not get 5 big booms. But with that being said, that is going to be the end of the episode. And this time, I will not get arrested, nor will my therapist actually get exploded. Thank you, Professor Dr. Finn. I really appreciate you coming onto this show.
Yeah, of course. I just want to remind and ask you to take your schizophrenia medication, or else you will be seeing horses. I probably should have told you that a while ago, but I think.
Oh, maybe I should take my meds. Thank you, Professor Dr. Finn. Doctor? Doctor?